Welcome to Money Making Sense, the show that talks about all things money. Today, I am very honored to be joined by Tim Ballard.
I learned about a little boy who was born in Utah, U.S. citizen, and was kidnapped in Haiti from his church, where his father was the pastor.
And Jim Caviezel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So we here today are because you're dealing with human trafficking and the money behind it, and you've got a documentary that is just coming out, Operation Toussaint, correct?
Yes.
Why don't you give us a little bit of background about human trafficking? I don't think people realize how pervasive it is worldwide and how much money is made off of human trafficking.
Every 30 seconds, a child is sold. They're sold for sex, they're sold for labor, they're sold for organ harvesting, which is something we're now getting into. There's 6 million children that are forced into one of those three categories right now, and the world doesn't know. Yeah, I mean, it's insane. There's more people enslaved today than ever before in the history of the world, and it is it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the planet. It's now surpassing drugs, guns. You can sell a child 50 times a day. You can sell a weapon once. You can sell a kilo of cocaine once. That's why it's so lucrative. So the numbers, I mean, human trafficking, that includes labor, sex, organ harvesting, it's $150 billion a year. Okay, that's what we're talking about. You could, to put that in kind of terms we can understand, you could buy every year, you could buy with money made from human trafficking, you could buy every Starbucks franchise on the planet, you could buy every NBA team, and still have enough money to send every child in the United States to college. So that's the kind of money we're talking about here. Now, the sex trafficking itself is $60 billion of the 150. So, I mean, it's so incomprehensible that it's growing so fast, and there's no way to stop it unless we create a movement.
And this isn't just affecting third world countries. I think people do not understand how many children in the United States are taken and sold into sex slavery.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's hundreds of thousands of child rape cases, more than that, every year. Just in this country, there's 10,000 children forced into sex slavery from outside the United States into the U.S. every year. We are the demand. It's our countrymen who travel overseas and abuse children. The United States is the highest consumer of child pornography. So we are the demand. The kids are being threatened here. It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Okay, so there would not be sex trafficking or child slavery if there wasn't a demand. So how do you get rid of the demand? I mean, how do you do that? How do you get rid of the demand? Because if that goes away, then there isn't any need to have the children.
Right. There's two answers to that. One, you attack the demand. You attack those people who have that desire, who have that need, and governments are doing a better job. The U.S. is doing a great job in terms of there's laws in place now that will prosecute the American who travels overseas and engages in sex with a child. We hold them accountable here as if they did it here. So you're attacking it that way. The other thing is more controversial, more difficult for people to accept. But you have to ask yourself why. I mean, first of all, there's about 2 million children today forced into the commercial sex trade. When you just narrow it down just to the children, why? What kind of demand would justify that number? That's a big, big demand. So who are these people that want sex with kids? Yeah. And why do they want it? Well, I've interrogated dozens and dozens and dozens of these guys, so I know what the story is, and they're sex addicts. And they have a lot of them have a very similar story where they're addicted to pornography. Not that every porn user is going to turn into this, a small percentage, but that small percentage still represents a number big enough to create a demand of 2 million children, right? It's a drug. It affects the brain like a drug. And for many people, and in many cases, just like marijuana, you graduate to cocaine to get that chemical reaction. Porn is a chemical reaction. That's what they want. And the regular porn will wear off, and then all of a sudden, they're looking for children. And so that's why you have to educate. You have to educate children. You have to educate the world on what it is, how sex addiction happens, how anyone is vulnerable, and how pornography, what role porn plays into that. We're not talking enough about that. If you want to curb the demand, you've got to start educating everybody, especially youth, about what happens if they let themselves go too far.
And your documentary, the Operation Toussaint, does that cover a lot of those issues?
It does. It focuses on a rescue specific that we did in Haiti, but it does cover all these things we're talking about. Absolutely.
Okay. And before we go more into that, I just want to turn to Jim and ask, what is your role in all this? Have you, did you go with Tim undercover to see some of the problems in Haiti?
That's being planned right now.
Okay.
And I wouldn't discuss where we're going, but there is something in the works right now. But and that's just to really help to see what they do and to get me on par of where they're at in the performance and in the film.
Okay.
We start the film. We film. He begins the film, the feature film.
So we're actually doing a feature film,
Right.
and then Alejandro Monteverde wrote a phenomenal script with Tim and about him and his story, and I didn't know anything about it. Just read the script. My agent called and said, "This is really good. You should read it." I did, and I wanted to meet with him, and he's everything that the script claimed he is, and you see that right away. Especially, I'm around team guys all the time, and your leader, the ones that are really the leader, the alpha, they listen to.
And how do you prepare yourself to deal with some of the issues that you're going to be dealing with in this film?
Well, I mean, prayer is a real big part for me, especially when you play people that are actually existing. When you play Jesus, people have an idea what he is, but there's no videotape of, the Last Supper or anything like that.
Going about doing this movie was, thinking that if we had done this thing in a controlled set, you would have never saw the performance. It was truly birthed in pain.
But I do as much research as I can, and then at some point you have to cut the cord and let her fly.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. One last question before I know we're kind of having to wrap things up. Tell me how I know you used to work for the Department of Homeland Security. What could you not do at the Homeland Security that you're able to do with Operation Underground Railroad, which is the organization that you joined?
I'd find a group of kids in Guatemala or Colombia, and I couldn't do anything about it because it wasn't a U.S. case. It's outside of the jurisdiction, and I understood that. However, that doesn't mean that we couldn't be doing more. Well, it all boiled down to there were two cases that came across my desk. One of a little boy who was kidnapped in Haiti, and another of several children we identified in Cartagena, Colombia. And I learned enough about those two cases, and I also learned that they were both outside the jurisdiction of the United States. So I either had to live with myself in the government knowing I can never help those two cases, or quit and go work those two cases, and then knowing that would lead to other cases that would fall outside my jurisdiction in the US government. And so we made the choice, my wife and I made the choice to quit that job that we loved, to go after those two cases in Haiti and Colombia. And the documentary, Operation Toussaint, actually tells that story in video format better than I can explain. So.
Okay, great.